Guys, this is Grandmaster Timur Gareev. I'm here with my students Ethan and Brandon, and we're going to be going over this game that I played up past summertime against a master level player. So here we have e4 in this situation. Basically the point we want to make here is that if let's say we play e4 as our first move, and our opponent continues any move along the 6th rank, except for knight f6, we're going to be playing even
d4.
We're going to be continuing d4, seizing initiative in the center. Now, if knight f6, so this is a different spot. Here we're going to be continuing e5, chasing the knight away. Here we're going to be playing. Let's say we play d4. Now, after knight f6, this is pretty much the only move along the 6th rank right here. 6th rank is the green arrow right here. So any move along the 6th rank, we're gonna want to play e4, basically setting up those central pawns. Now, the preference of whether you want to play queen's gambit, queen's pawn openings, or king pawn openings comes into consideration. But other than that, let's continue on with the game. Knight f6, and here I continue c4. My opponent plays e6. So there's a couple strategies. Brandon, would you describe the strategies of how black can deal as far as the center goes? So the first strategy is when we hold the center. What's the second strategy?
Attack it later.
Attack it later. So basically give it up initially, and then attack it later on. You know, try to influence different ways, but essentially the strategy for either white or black should be associated with central initiative sooner or later. So knight comes to f3. Here white has an option of developing the knight on c3. So then what is black going to do, Ethan? What is black going to do in this situation as far as reducing the influence of this knight on c3?
Bishop to b4.
Exactly. So bishop comes out to b4, pinning the knight, and this is a Nimzo opening. I would recommend the Nimzo opening to most people who are trying to see what would be trying to switch or learn a new opening in d4. So it comes out to f3. That's what I play. My opponent plays b6. Now it's bishop b4. White has an option of playing knight c3 as well as developing the knight to d2 or bishop to d2. So quite a few options. This is Bogo Indian. Black prefers b6, going towards Queen's Indian. We develop knight, and black finally pins the knight. Just for the sake of the view quality, I'm gonna flip the board real quick because white's the one who's gonna be pushing the action in this game. So bishop comes out to g5, and here we get a classic situation of Nimzo defense, where black is supposed to be chasing the bishop this way. g5 may not look quite as straightforward to a lot of people for who this position is new. Knight comes out to e4, queen c2, black solidifies, e3 right here, black solidifies once again. This is an essential square, essential piece to hold the outpost. White comes out with the bishop. We exchange the bishop for the knight. This is kind of the key part of playing Nimzo. A lot of times you guys are going to face this pawn structure and going to be playing against. Hey guys, Brandon is going to be leaving us until our next lesson.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check back next time, and next time we'll go over my game versus Grandmaster Timur.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to continue with our analysis right here. Hello guys, so here we go. This is the situation in Nimzo, and this is considered favorable for black, d6, and white should be in a hurry to get things going. Otherwise, strategically, black is about to solidify, get the queen out. So strategically, this situation is not good for white at all. And there's the weaknesses right here. This knight is just in a beautiful position here, right there in the center. So white is not doing that good. White gotta get things going with d5, where things get pretty complicated, but black comes out to be in a fine shape. So let's get back to our game, where my opponent continued bishop b7. I go ahead and do a continue with a good development move. So Ethan, we've been discussing there's two most important things that we do in the opening. So what are those things?
To develop.
So we develop the pieces, and what else? We focus on which squares? The
Center.
The squares in the center. We want to create a powerful central structure supported by good light pieces. So this is exactly what's forming in white's position. So black goes ahead and castles. So that's a mistake which allows white to enjoy advantage in this game. And black plays d5. So d5, you see, the key to learning a good chess opening is to know the ideas and where to apply those. So here in this position, a black situation is actually fine. After c5, castle, c takes d, e takes d, bishop e7, black still has very good chances to equalize and create counterattack in this game. Now, after d5, things are different. Black trying to set up the pawns on white squares, and forgets about this bishop out there. You know, that's going to be restricted by this pawn on d5. So there's no reason to play d5 in this situation. So I immediately take advantage of it, making this situation static, not allowing black to take on c4. Let's say castle right here would probably be a mistake, since after d takes c, black's plan works perfectly fine. You know, the bishop is on this open diagonal, and there's no reason to allow that. I'm gonna go ahead and take on d5, pawn takes, and castle. Now a couple pieces are misplaced. Obviously the bishop, as we mentioned, hitting this pawn right here, and this guy right here. It's not really doing anything special, and there's no reason for the bishop to be exchanged for the knight either. So my opponent continues knight bd7 with the intention to return with the bishop to e7 at one point to another to break this, to neutralize this pin right here that's very unpleasant. So Ethan, could you just suggest us ways for white to develop the initiative in this position, as far as, you know, gaining a central outpost or putting pressure on black's position? What would be the candidate moves that you consider in this situation? We have quite a few pins. Okay, so there's moves like bishop f5. There's a move knight e5. Okay, so those are the moves I'm talking about. Now, I decide to connect the rooks. So in order to connect the rooks, what do we tend to do?
Maybe queen to b3.
Queen to b3 is a possibility right here. Okay, so essentially the key is to remove the queen off the way of the rooks. That way we connect the rooks. There's a nice harmony going on right here. So then we can pick the best spots for the rooks, whether it's e1 and d1, c1 and d1. Whichever that is, the decision becomes available to us. Now we're going to play queen c2. And what I have in mind is a little trick right here. I was actually showing, I gave an exercise to my students to find this idea right here for white. So basically, let's say as the game continued, black plays bishop e7, rook a d1, rook e8, and I continue bishop f5. So here, what tends to happen in this type of spot is black wants to ease the pressure right here, because white is the one putting quite a bit of positional and strategic pressure. It's difficult for black to unpin. So black tends to try to do something like knight e4. So in this situation, there's a couple of positional ways to continue and hold the advantage in this situation. What do you think is the tactical approach here, Ethan? Well, we gotta examine this bishop e4, d takes e, and what happens, this bishop is hanging right here. So if we decide to pick up this pawn, we're going to lose the bishop on h4. If we decide to do an intermediate bishop e7, after d takes e, queen takes, and let's say knight d2, well, all of a sudden black is not doing all that bad. Play knight f6, and play c5 right here, and black is doing fine in this position. Now there's a little tactical shot right here. A little tactical shot after knight e4. Knight takes d5. So what is this idea all about? Well, knight takes on d5, bishop takes on d5, and here we're going to be taking this knight right here on e4. If bishop takes, we pick up the bishop, and once bishop takes on h4, queen is available to defend the bishop. There's nothing special here for black, and white just has a extra pawn and enjoys advantage in this position. Now knight takes d5. What if bishop takes on h4? How are we going to continue here, Ethan? You gotta assess which pieces. You see, the important part of figuring out what the best solution is to assess which pieces can be captured, which pieces are hanging in a certain position. So here,
bishop takes knight.
exactly, yeah. So things become obvious after we kind of take a look at the basic captures. Now, what may seem just a little bit confusing as far as to how white can proceed is there's a little pin, a little pressure right here. Black's situation is not that coordinated. If you notice, white's position is very well centralized, and there's quite a bit of harmony where white's pieces working together and well connected. So here white has a couple solutions, a couple tactical approaches. If black decides to take immediate advantage of this situation right here, playing f5, hey, bunch of pieces hanging, white has a couple good approaches. One of them is actually fairly simple. Knight goes to f6, or which one is the other option of making a check with the knight even? Go right here, we can jump right here, correct? And after black recaptures, we're gonna get this bishop right here, extra pawn, and I would say a winning position here for white. So this is the trick. You guys should remember this. Knight d5 works in different spots. Obviously, calculate it, see if it works. If you think you gotta go for it. So this is a little trap I was setting for my opponent. He didn't really go for it, and decided to just maneuver his knight to a fate, easing the tension a little bit. I'm continuing logically, setting up the knight right there in the center. My opponent follows up with a defensive move. So here's the general strategy of playing winning chess. You want to go pursue your strategy and make sure, or rather, what's going to happen naturally, your opponent is going to be reacting to what you're doing. So that's exactly what you want. You want your opponent to react to your strategy. So my opponent is defending, and I'm attacking as white. Obviously, depends on the situation you're in and the caliber of player you're facing, but that's generally the winning chess. You want to dictate the action, and then your opponent is going to be reacting to it. So I play f4 right here, solidifying this beautiful knight right here. Knight goes to d7. So my opponent playing reasonably well, offering the exchange of the bishops. That's kind of what you want to do in tough positions. That's an important lesson to learn from a defensive perspective. You want to be exchanging pieces. What kind of situations are those, Ethan? The situations where it's a little bit tough to defend. What other situations? As far as space goes. Let's say in this situation, who would you say has more space, more dominance on the board? White has more space because of better central structure right here, okay, and plus the pieces assisting white's strategy. So when we have that, do we want to be exchanging pieces? let's say we have more space in the position, we have a more dominant situation. Do we want to be exchanging pieces? We don't want to be
No.
exchanging pieces, right? We want to keep those for what? For
To
potential?
go in.
To go in, yeah.
To the spaces.
To go in the spaces to maneuver. Okay, this is an important word right here, important concept. Maneuver, and at the same time, I mean, you dominate the central squares. You have your pieces on excellent spots. What's going to happen naturally? Naturally, we're going to have the attacking opportunities, correct? And what do those lead to? Generally, when you ask players who are out there, playing tournaments, how do you win at chess? Well, you checkmate. Well, that's what a lot of people aim to accomplish. Okay, and it's very important, to know that you want to ultimately checkmate. Now, a lot of times, the most important thing in chess is to create those winning attacking opportunities, and then checkmating opportunity is going to follow naturally. Knight goes to d7, so there's no reason for us to exchange those bishops. So the bishop got to retreat. We're placing the bishop to f2, and temporarily it's out of play on f2. It does have some defensive qualities, defending that pawn on e3. However, the main point is black's position is cramped, and it's good to keep it that way. Rook c8. The rook goes into the pinned territory where the bishop is controlling it, and basically indicates that black doesn't have too many amazing opportunities right here. If black decides to take the knight, how would you proceed here, Ethan? Just give us a guess of what you think would be a better move here. Either taking with f pawn or d pawn.
Maybe the f pawn.
The f pawn. What would be the reason for you to take with f pawn?
Maybe to open up the rook.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So this is good reasons for us to take with the f pawn so that the rook can open up. Now if we take with the d pawn, then what's going to be happening? Now we open up the d-filed rook, okay, and potentially can support it with e4. So both are possible. I would definitely consider which one to go for. Maybe prefer the d pawn or f pawn. So here bishop f2, rook c8, and there's no reason to wait any longer. With preparation moves, we gotta go for a central breakthrough. So when we mean central breakthrough, what do we associate that with? Is it the pieces, the pawns? What would that be, Ethan?
To get into the center.
Yeah, getting in the center, the breakthrough. How would you go about it? Would that be the pawns, the pieces, the light pieces? How do you break through in the center? What do we generally mean by that?
The pawns.
The pawns, yeah. So here, this is a pawn. We do, our pieces do support our attacking actions, active actions. Here it's the pawn that's going to be initiating our attack. e4 right here, so gaining more space and opening up a black's situation. So pawn goes ahead and captures, and here black's position is not pleasant at all. We have a couple options, just nice positional moves, let's say knight e4, very simple. White has a pretty solid advantage. Black's position is pinned all over the place. There's an interesting idea of queen b3, where we aiming at f7. It's not easy to defend at all. So this position is definitely not pleasant. How would you, what sacrifices do you see here, Ethan? You see, it's important to have a trained eye for typical sacrifices. Going against the king, opening up the king. Which one would you consider as one of the possibilities here for white?
Maybe like bishop to h7.
We could take a look at this one. Now this square is well defended right here. The knight can capture it. How do we open it up? How do we open up black's king? How do we open up black's situation right here? Bishop h7, you see, doesn't really contribute quite as much to our attack. We want to open up the king, get the king out there in the open on the next move.
And like knight takes f7.
Very good. So this is a consideration. Now, do we know if it's good or not? Well, we gotta calculate. But this is that idea that's definitely gonna be on our mind for a while until we figure out what's happening there. So knight takes on f7. King pretty much gotta take the knight. Then how do we continue? We wanna get the king really out there in the open. If we play knight f7, then we obviously gotta be thinking about this move right here. Queen b3. So the king is in a terrible spot. There's no better square than f6 right now. So we're going to be pursuing the king and getting it closer towards the center as we're making checks and kicking it out of the safety zone. So how do we proceed here? There's a couple options, right? This attack generally has to follow a forced pattern where we just putting pressure, and our opponent has to respond, has to move every time we make a check or we make it forced. Essentially, we're putting out the threats every move so that our opponent doesn't have time to recuperate. We're constantly giving a hard time. So how do we activate this knight towards the attack? The simplest one is to pick up the pawn. Yeah, very good. So knight e4, king captures the bishop. Now what do? We gotta make sure the king doesn't run back. This is obviously the position that needs time to calculate, especially in a tournament environment where each game is important. So here, how does white continue?
You mean like queen to f7?
Very good, excellent. So we're kicking the king out now. Important to see if king captures the knight right there. How do we proceed?
Then queen to, or not the queen.
We could continue this way, trying to finish the king off in different ways. This may still be a winning position, but here we have a simple checkmate in one. What is that? What is that continuation here?
The rook to e1.
Very good. Good job. Rook e1, and the king is checkmate right here. So king cannot capture the knight. Black continues, covers the king. We're going to be continuing knight g3. And here's the idea here. If king captures pawn right here, we're going to be continuing bishop e3, sacrificing the bishop. If king captures, we have another checkmate in one. Actually, a couple possibilities right here. Which ones come to mind, Ethan?
Rook to f3.
This is a simple one, rook f3, and there's another one where we retract the queen from way from out there.
Queen to b3.
Yeah, very nice. That's another checkmate in one. So the king is in trouble, and obviously I spent quite a few minutes calculating this. I didn't just go for it. Once again, this position right here, important breakthrough, e4. Now this diagonal opens up, so we can exploit it in various ways. White prefers the most energetic one, knight f7 right here. King captures, making a check right there with the queen. King moves on. If the knight covers right here, well, we're gonna bring the queen towards the checkmate, then finish him off with this one right here. And the queen is coming to f7. So there's a few opportunities for black. None of them are that good. King goes to f6. Basically, this whole idea is forced. Now knight covers. Knight g3. An important point right here. Let's say king takes. We do this bishop sacrifice. Already white is 2 pieces down. Okay, so things gotta happen fast. How do we continue here, Ethan? Let's bring the rook towards the checkmate. Okay, what would that be? This is not quite checkmate in one, but this is the way we're going to initiate our checkmating attack.
You like rook to f4. Check.
Very good. Rook f4. King goes here. And how do we finish him off? Quite a few opportunities right here. Okay, one thing you could notice, if you guys struggle with the way to finish that king right there, you know, there's abundance of winning continuations where you can ease into it with rook f6, and then a lot of squares become available. Queen h5 checkmate. Now there's all kinds of rook retreats. This is actually a checkmate right here. Rook goes to e4. Boom. What's another way to checkmate? We could use the pawn, right? What would be the move?
h4.
h4, very good. h4 checkmate. So my opponent might have gotten checkmate or resigned a couple moves before. This was a game against Master Salahuddinov at New York International. Thank you for watching. Ethan, good job. And I'm looking forward to see you guys next time with a game from Brandon, which he actually won against me in a simultaneous exhibition.